So, um, I want to start today by asking you, the listener, to put yourself in a very specific and, well, probably highly relatable situation.
Oh, I think we all know this one.
Right. So imagine you are sitting in a cafe, or maybe you're just, at your desk, and you're reading an article in English,
Mm-hmm.
and you are just breezing right through it. The vocabulary registers instantly, the grammar makes perfect sense, and you're following the author's argument without missing a single beat.
You feel totally confident.
Exactly, you feel fluent. But then a stranger walks up to your table. Maybe it's a native English speaker asking for directions.
Or a colleague just suddenly jumping into a fast-paced conversation.
Yeah, and they start talking to you, and instantly it feels like, I don't know, a fuse blows in your brain.
It's just total panic.
Right. All of that reading comprehension just vanishes. You hear the physical sounds coming out of their mouth, but the second the speech speeds up, you feel completely, utterly lost.
It is honestly an incredibly frustrating phenomenon, and it creates this intense feeling of whiplash,
Oh, absolutely.
Because you are sitting there, your brain is just scrambling to catch the meaning of the sentence, but by the time you've mentally translated the first two words,
They're already on to the next topic.
exactly, the speaker is already three sentences ahead. It just creates this cascading failure of comprehension.
It's a terrible feeling, mainly because the proof of your knowledge is sitting right there on the page in front of you.
Right.
Like, you possess the vocabulary. You literally just proved it by reading.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment of actual conversation, you feel like a total beginner again.
Mm.
So for this deep dive, our entire mission is to solve that exact problem.
Yes, and it's a solvable problem.
It is. We are unpacking a highly effective guide originally put together by Her Vox Studio. This features the insights of their hosts, Saffron and Zane.
Right. They do great work.
They really do. And they have laid out a methodology designed to fundamentally rewire how your brain processes spoken English, making it faster and, far more clear.
But I think before we delve into the actual mechanics of their method, we really need to establish a baseline. And this is drawn directly from the Her Vox Studio source material.
Okay, what's the baseline?
If you experience that sheer panic when someone speaks fast, you need to internalize this. You are not bad at English.
I mean, I think we really need to linger on that for a second.
Yeah.
Because people internalize that acoustic panic as, like, a personal intellectual failure.
Oh, totally.
They think, I'm just not smart enough to process this.
Which is just a complete misdiagnosis of the problem.
No.
Millions of language learners face this exact same hurdle.
Yeah.
They consume English media daily, yet they completely struggle with unscripted conversations. The issue here isn't your intelligence.
Right.
And it isn't your fundamental grasp of the vocabulary either. It is purely a mechanical issue of auditory processing.
Because reading and listening are just completely different beasts.
Exactly. When you read, you control the pace. Your eyes can, linger on a complex word. But when you listen, you are totally at the mercy of the speaker's pace. Your brain simply requires a different type of acoustic conditioning to handle that real-time data.
So if the mental hardware is fine, but the auditory processing software is crashing, how do we write a better program? Like, where do we even begin to condition the brain for that real-time speed?
Well, the guide begins with building what they call a daily anchor.
Okay.
Zane outlines a very specific metric in the source material. He says you must listen to English every single day, but only for 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, now I have to challenge that right out of the gate.
I figured you might.
I mean, is 10 to 15 minutes really enough to rewire an adult brain for a completely new language? Let's be real here.
It sounds suspiciously short.
It does. If I want to get into peak physical shape, and I tell my trainer I'm going to do exactly 5 push-ups a day, they're going to laugh me right out of the gym.
Yeah, they would.
Because 5 push-ups won't build muscle. So is 15 minutes of listening actually going to build fluency? Or is this just, I don't know, a psychological trick to make people feel productive without doing the hard work?
Well, that assumes the brain acquires language the exact same way muscles acquire mass, right?
Doesn't it?
Actually, no. Not through progressive overload and fatigue. Auditory processing is fundamentally different. This is about neurological familiarity, not endurance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you aren't trying to tear muscle fibers. You are trying to signal to your nervous system that these specific acoustic frequencies, these phones, are vital for survival.
Huh.
And when it comes to neurological adaptation, Consistency vastly outperforms sporadic intensity.
Meaning like a massive 3-hour binge listening session on a Sunday is actually less effective than 15 minutes a day.
Significantly less effective.
Wait, really?
Oh, absolutely. A 3-hour session exhausts your cognitive resources, and eventually your brain just tunes it out as background noise.
Like leaving the TV on in the other room?
Exactly. But 15 minutes every single day sends a repeated daily signal to your auditory cortex saying, this environment is permanent. We need to adapt to these sounds.
Wow.
The Her Vox Studio source is super emphatic on this point. It is the daily, uninterrupted exposure that actually builds the neural pathways.
Okay, that reframes the whole approach for me. It's about the frequency of the signal, not the volume of it.
Precisely.
But that begs the question of what exactly we are listening to during those 15 minutes.
Right.
Because the immediate instinct for a learner is to just jump straight into the deep end.
Always.
You want to watch a fast-paced action movie without subtitles? Or listen to two native speakers arguing at rapid speed because you want to practice in the real world.
And Safran and Zane explicitly warn against that exact instinct.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. The guide states that beginners, or really anyone struggling with comprehension, must start with slow, clear audio.
Okay.
Fast English is simply too complex to decode if your brain hasn't learned the foundational acoustic boundaries first.
I always think about this in terms of like jumping on a treadmill.
Okay, how so?
Well, you don't start a workout at a full, 12-mile-an-hour sprint.
No, you'd fly right off the back.
Exactly. You start with a walk just to find your footing and get your balance.
That is a perfect analogy.
Because, if you think about it visually,
Yeah.
if I hand you a printed page of text where somebody has deleted every single space between the words.
Oh, that would be a nightmare to read.
Right. So it just reads, what are you going to do as one massive block of letters? Your eyes would completely glaze over.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to parse it.
And that is exactly what native real speed is acoustically. There are no actual pauses between words in fluid speech.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. In linguistics, that blending is actually called co-articulation.
Co-articulation.
Right. Native speakers constantly blur words together. Going to becomes gonna. What are you becomes whatcha.
Right, right.
If you haven't trained your ear to recognize the constituent parts of a sentence at a slow, deliberate pace, your brain has absolutely no chance of parsing that massive block of acoustic letters at a sprint.
So the slow English acts as the spaces between the words.
Exactly. It gives your brain the critical fraction of a second it needs to map the auditory sound to the written vocabulary that you already know.
Okay, so we have our 15-minute daily anchor, and we are adding the space back in by using slow, clear audio.
Check, check.
But let's look closely at the actual activity taking place during that time, because I'll be honest, I have definitely put on slow French audio while I was doing the dishes.
Let me guess, you just let it wash over you passively.
Yep, and I retained absolutely zero of it.
Well, that addresses a massive misconception in language acquisition, and Her Vox Studio tackles this head-on.
What do they say?
Safran poses a very direct question in the text. She asks, is listening to something once enough?
We've been so conditioned by the entertainment industry to treat everything as, like, disposable content. We listen to something once, we check the box, and we move on to the next one. We think of language practice as just consuming content.
But language acquisition requires a completely different mechanism than content consumption.
How so?
Zane's method in the source material dictates that you must listen again, and crucially, you must repeat what you hear.
Repeat it.
Yes, it is an active repeat and practice method.
And this is where the guide drops what I consider the absolute biggest aha moment of the entire process.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Right. Because by physically repeating the audio out loud, you are not just testing your memory of what was said. You are actively improving your speaking skills through a listening exercise.
It's incredible. It reveals the deep neurological connection between the ear and the mouth.
Yeah.
We tend to think of listening and speaking as two completely separate skills, one passive, one active.
They're completely different compartments in the brain.
Right. But functionally, they are a closed loop. When you listen to a slow sentence and then force your own vocal cords, tongue, and lips to reproduce those exact phonetic sounds, you are engaging your motor cortex to reverse engineer the auditory data.
Wow. You are essentially using your mouth to prove to your brain that it heard the sound correctly.
That's exactly what's happening.
It makes me realize that listening isn't just data collection, it's literally the physical preparation for speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Because you cannot speak a language with a natural rhythm or intonation if you haven't first mapped out the muscle movements by mimicking what you hear.
And mimicking a native pattern requires repetition. The first time you hear a slow audio clip, your brain is utilizing all of its processing power just to figure out the general context.
Just to survive the sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the second time, it actually has the bandwidth to notice the specific vocabulary. And by the third time, it's noticing the intonation, like the subtle rise and fall of the speaker's pitch. Only through that repetition do you gather enough acoustic data to actually repeat it out loud accurately.
Okay, so the mechanical foundation of this method is rock solid. We have daily exposure, slow audio to provide the acoustic spacing, and physically repeating the words to close that auditory motor loop.
It's a great system.
It is. But even with all of that preparation, there is a psychological wall that learners hit.
Oh, inevitably.
Because eventually you do have to step out of the practice room and into a real fast-paced conversation.
Right.
And this is where the Her Vox Studio guide points out a universally fatal mistake that learners make.
Yes. The obsession with trying to understand every single word.
It is the ultimate perfection trap.
It really is.
We treat a spoken sentence like a math equation, where if we are missing one variable, the whole thing just falls apart. But treating language that way is like looking so closely at the individual brushstrokes of a painting.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. You stare so hard at one tiny dab of paint that you completely miss what the picture is actually showing. You miss the whole landscape.
Or, to use another analogy from the original Her Vox analysis, it's like trying to catch every single raindrop in a thunderstorm with a teacup.
Yes. You get so hyper-focused on frantically catching one specific drop that you end up completely drenched by the rest of the storm.
You miss the conversation entirely, and that teacup analogy perfectly illustrates the limitation of our working memory.
How does that work cognitively?
Well, cognitive science shows us that the brain only has so much RAM available at any given moment.
Right.
And Zane states unequivocally in the guide that trying to catch every word is a mistake.
Really? A mistake?
Yes, think about it. If a native speaker uses a colloquialism for the third word in a 10-word sentence, and you freeze to mentally search for the translation of that one word.
Your working memory hits a bottleneck.
Exactly. And while your brain is frozen processing word number 3, the speaker has already finished the paragraph. You've lost the entire thread.
So how does the guide suggest we bypass that bottleneck? I mean, how do we stop looking at the brushstrokes and see the painting?
By focusing exclusively on keywords.
Keywords.
Yes. Zane explains that in English, not all words are assigned equal value.
Okay.
You have the structural grammar words, the articles, the prepositions, the auxiliary verbs, which essentially just serve as the glue holding the sentence together.
Like the, at, is.
Exactly. And then you have the keywords, the nouns, the main verbs, the descriptive adjectives. These are the words carrying the actual meaning.
Let's test that. So if someone says, I was wondering if you were going to the store to buy some apples. The entire meaning of that sentence rests on 4 words, right? Going, store, buy, apples.
Yep.
If the acoustic blur of native speech causes you to completely miss the I was wondering if you are, it literally does not matter.
Not one bit.
The core signal is loud and clear. Going, store, buy, apples.
And the Her Vox Studio hosts actually modeled this exact realization in the source text.
Well, they do.
Yeah, Saffron openly admits to her own frustration. She says, I think I try too hard to understand every word.
Which is so relatable.
It is. And Zane points out that this over-effort is actively sabotaging her. The sheer act of trying too hard to decode the grammar words creates that cognitive overload.
Wow.
His advice is to consciously relax and just listen for the main idea, rather than obsessing over individual words.
It's fascinating because English is what linguists call a stress-timed language.
Right.
So native English speakers naturally swallow or mumble those unimportant grammar words anyway.
They do.
They rush through them to land heavily on the keywords. So if a learner is stressing out trying to hear a word that the native speaker barely even pronounced in the first place, they are fighting against the actual physics of the language.
Which requires a profound shift in how we evaluate our own learning. I mean, we are trained by academic testing to believe that anything less than 100% comprehension is a failure.
Oh, absolutely. The school mindset.
But in real-world acoustic processing, Grasping 70% of the keywords usually results in a 100% comprehension of the intent. Embracing that ambiguity is essential.
But letting go of that need for perfection, I mean, that brings up a huge emotional hurdle.
It really does.
It feels incredibly vulnerable to stand in front of someone and just accept that you are only catching fragments of what they are saying.
And that vulnerability triggers the final challenge addressed by the guide, which is the emotional management of the learning process.
Step 5.
Exactly. Step 5. Zane gives very direct advice here. He says, be patient. He explicitly warns learners against letting frustration take over.
Which is incredibly easy to say, but, when you were in that cafe and the native speaker is looking at you expecting an answer, the embarrassment is a physical sensation.
Oh, yeah.
You feel your face flush, your heart rate spike.
And that biological stress response is exactly why you have to manage the frustration.
Why is that?
Because when you feel embarrassed or stressed, your brain releases cortisol. And cortisol literally impairs your cognitive function. It blocks your ability to process new information.
So you literally can't learn in that state.
Exactly. Linguists sometimes call this the affective filter. If your frustration is high, the language simply cannot get in.
Wow.
So Zane's formula in the text is a reminder to trust the biology of adaptation. He says, the more you listen, the better you understand.
Just straightforward reps.
Yes, there is no magical shortcut that bypasses the time your neural pathways need to physically map these sounds.
That help build that necessary patience. The Her Vox Studio hosts don't just leave us with abstract theory.
Yeah, they are very practical.
They issue a very specific, actionable mission at the end of their lesson. They literally say, now it's your turn.
I love that part.
So I want to hand that exact practice task over to you, the listener, right now. Consider this your assignment for the day.
The task is broken down into 3 highly focused components.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First, you need to find one short piece of English audio today, just a few minutes long.
Easy enough. Second, as that audio plays, you have to consciously deploy the keyword strategy.
Right.
Actively fight the academic urge to translate every single syllable. Let the structural grammar words blur past you like background noise and only hook your attention onto the heavy words carrying the meaning. Focus entirely on the main idea.
And the third component, repeat what you hear. Speak it out loud.
Close the loop?
Exactly. Force your motor cortex to engage with your auditory cortex, closing the loop and physically building your capacity to speak.
Listen, filter for the signal and repeat. Yeah. It is an elegant, highly efficient loop.
When you look at the architecture of this entire method, the ultimate takeaway from Her Vox Studio is a radical redefinition of what listening actually is.
It's not passive.
No, it is not just the passive reception of sound waves. It is the active foundational mechanism for producing language.
It is the intake valve for fluency.
I like that.
If the valve is clogged with frustration or, an obsession with perfect grammar, nothing gets through to the engine.
And as Saffron highlights at the conclusion of the source material, this process compounds over time.
Like interest.
Exactly. The more you listen using this relaxed, keyword-focused method, the more you understand. And as your comprehension stabilizes, your confidence naturally rises.
You stop having that panic response in the cafe.
Or freezing up during a work meeting. Every single daily session physically alters your brain to handle the speed of the real world.
It takes the mystery out of fluency and turns it into a totally manageable mechanical process.
It really does.
Well, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought that takes this Her Vox Studio methodology and applies it to something much closer to home.
Okay, where are we going with this?
We just spent this entire time dissecting how crucial it is to relax, to stop obsessing over every single literal word, and to focus on the keywords to grasp a speaker's true intent in a new language. But it makes me wonder, do we routinely make this exact same mistake in our native languages?
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
Think about the last time you were in a heated argument with a partner or trying to navigate a sensitive conversation with a friend. Are we ever so hyper-focused on analyzing every literal word they use, looking for a logical flaw or a technicality or just jumping on a poorly chosen phrase, that we completely miss the main idea of what they're actually feeling.
We definitely do that.
Maybe this keyword strategy, this practice of relaxing the affective filter and listening only for the core message, isn't just a hack for learning English.
Right.
Maybe it is a fundamental tool for becoming a more empathetic, effective listener in every single relationship we have.
That is a deeply compelling parallel. Sometimes the sheer volume of words we process gets in the way of the actual meaning, regardless of whether it is our first language or our fifth.
It definitely gives you a new lens through which to view your next conversation.
It really does.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope unpacking the Her Vox Studio Guide gives you a tangible, practical way to transform your daily practice.
Definitely.
Do not forget to tackle your short audio assignment today. Focus on those keywords, and above all else, trust the process of adaptation.
We look forward to exploring the next set of sources with you soon. Keep up the consistent practice.
And until then, remember, you don't need to catch every single drop of rain to know which way the storm is moving. See you next time.